Prime Ministers will also proceed with the introduction of digital ID that will modernize how citizens interact with public services.
Shalom. Once again, all praises, honor, and glory unto the Most High, Yahweh Ba'asham, Yahweh Shai Ba'asham Kodash. Double honors to the elders and the apostles of the great millstone, and salutations to all you sincere Akiam. And this is your brother Bawan back again with another video. Through the spirit and power of Yahweh Ba'asham, Yahweh Shai Ba'asham Kodash, all praises and glory is due, especially in the times that we're in. And I'm actually surprised because I already thought that the UK had already implemented digital ID, countrywide or territory wide or whatever, right? And this is coming as a surprise to me that they haven't actually, started them implementing or using digital ID, but just recently pushed a bill, right, in order to basically mandate the use of digital ID all across the UK, which of course also includes, any territory, right, or any country that is basically still under the UK. So the Commonwealth countries, so that's your Scotland, Wales, Ireland. I mean, okay, so not not Ireland, sure, but Ireland and all the other parts of the UK, right, and also including the various islands that are still, not independent from the UK, right? So, yeah, this is actually a pretty a pretty big deal right here, because this is your algorithm towards the MoTB, right? It has been said ad nauseum, okay, multiple times, what the digital ID is, how it links up with the MoTB, which is the implantable RFID microchip, right? And why, when you see this digital ID being pushed, right? Really, when you see anything that looks like internet authentication, that looks like, internet identification being pushed, that's the algorithm towards the MOTB. Last year, especially, and this is what actually made me even think that, the UK had already implemented digital ID. When it was last year that you had the Online Safety Act, and basically all these different tech companies were now looking for now, making their users identify themselves whenever they use their sites. So all your accounts had to be registered. All your accounts had to have a verified email that's linked back to you, right? So no more burner accounts, no more fake accounts, no more accounts that basically, are, like I said, burner accounts. And different companies started implementing it, but eventually they just took their, stopped even hearing about that. So now this has come up again, right? And this is going back to, like I said, once again, the digital ID, right? The Let's get this article first before I start going into what I want to actually speak on, right? Maybe I should get precepts first. I don't. Yeah, no, let's focus on the article first, okay? Just to see what details are involved in this. So now the king has spoken. His mindset will proceed with the introduction of digital ID that will modernize how citizens interact with public services, right? And that's basically, what he said in the video, word for word, bar for bar. And that's, the agenda for Esau Edom right there, right? To use this digital ID to control your interaction with their public services, because the true agenda, and we constantly warn our people of this, because that's really what this is about. That's really what this video is about, that the men of the Lord have been warning you about this, right? Every time you see digital ID being pushed, every time you see, online authentication, right, having a identifiable online presence being pushed, under the disguise of improving human interaction or whatever the fuck, under the disguise of child safety and protection, right? Under the disguise of, fraud detection and authentication, because that's another thing right there. You have a lot of these payment services, your Inter Switch, right? Visa, that also require, certain amounts of authentication, right? And also, that started them cutting down on any, started cutting down on the started cutting down their payment services on different apps, right? So they stopped processing payment for certain websites and apps, and of course, I think they rolled that back. It was mainly mainly the corn sites, right? Because of, once again, this authentication issue. So that's what Esau is pushing for right now. He's trying to get, the people of this kingdom to sign up more, basically. you know use the use to sign up more, basically use be identifiable online, right? But let's keep reading the article. There's only that passing reference to the Digital Access to Services Bill in the King's speech published today, but it's enough for providers to declare that digital ID is firmly on the legislative agenda, right? So Esau is pushing forward, right? And he's pushing towards his NWO, his ultimate agenda right here, the Great Reset, which of course will be powered by the implantable RFID technology. So that's coming as well, right? Because you still have so many doubters, right? You still have so many scoffers that don't believe the MoTB is coming. But what you are seeing right now, right? All these things you are seeing Esau pulling out of his ass right now. The king basically coming out and saying that we're going to push this digital ID everywhere. This is all leading towards the MOTB, because you think the king can come out and say, "Oh, we're going to start pushing the MOTB everywhere," the same way he did about the digital ID. Absolutely, he can, man, and eventually he probably will, because that's Bible prophecy right there. That these are the things that these are the things that want to come to pass. Okay, so let's keep going into it. Is it the right legislation? Who stands to benefit? What are the long-term implications? There are the big questions the UK finds itself facing as it once again tussles with an insistent government pushing a national digital identity scheme. In comments emailed to biometric updates, Yoti CEO Robin Tomes emphasizes that while the principle is right, it's important that participation remains optional and offers choices, with citizens free to verify their identity through government-issued or private sector solutions that have been certified to the DVS Trust framework. A healthy, competitive, and interoperable market is more likely to drive innovation, stronger security standards, and deliver better user experience that builds lasting public trust. Okay, so let's keep. So yeah, that's basically it. Because enough background information on this matter. So now I want to get the quick precepts, going into going into this whole thing. Right, so let's first and foremost go to the book of Micah. So right here, right. So this is the book of Micah 2 verse 1. Woe to them that devise iniquity and work evil upon their beds. When the morning is light, they practice it, because it is in the power of their hands. And this is just a reminder that Esau Edom, this is Esau Edom we are talking about. This is the so-called red man we are talking about. Of course, you heard the Charles, right, when he was talking about it's going to be made so that, for easier communication and networking between citizens, right? But when has this devil ever been known to do something for the benefit of his fellow man? Hell, when has the devil ever been known to acknowledge the humanity of his fellow man, right? So we understand through the Spirit, as you should as well, that clearly this is for the agenda to be pushed, right? This is for Esau Edom to fulfill whatever enterprise he has in his heart, right? That's why the scriptures say that when the devils, right, let's get that precept. When they doeth good, they doeth it unwillingly. I think that should be this Ecclesiasticus. But I can't remember exactly where it is. Here it is. So this is the book of Ecclesiasticus 4, and I'll start from the Ecclesiasticus 14, verse 5. He that is evil to himself, to whom will he be good? He shall not take pleasure in his goods. There is none worse than he that envieth himself, and this is a recompense of his wickedness. And if he doeth good, he doeth it unwillingly, and at the last he will declare his wickedness. Let me just make something clear. I'm not saying that digital ID is actually a good thing, that Esau is turning into evil or anything like that. No, this is clearly, it's the whole digital ID thing is just another tactic that Esau is using to slowly, gradually bring in the MoTB, right? Because right, look, okay, the aspects of the digital ID is basically, your online identification that will be connected to, at least that's how it's being done in a lot of other countries. It's connected to your banks, it's connected to, even some of your other forms of identification, right? Your driver license, if you have a national ID card, if you have a passport, if you have um, anything that can be passed through the system in order to be used to identify you, right? That is, the digital ID is also linked into that, and that's really what Esau is trying to do, right? Link that digital ID, right, to every other aspect, every other form of identification, or every other biometric that you have. Your prints are on there, your fingerprints, right, and all the other biometric information, which is basically going to eventually, and this is where the connection to the MoTB comes in, and all that digital ID information is going to eventually be removed from, the cloud, right, quote unquote, removed from the cloud and placed into the implantable RFID microchip and inserted in either your right hand or your forehead, as the scriptures say. Or really, it's any hand, but you know, the right hand is of course the dominant hand for majority of people. So that's what that we're going into, right? To be inserted into your right hand or into your forehead, okay? And from there, these devils will be able to access that information. Well, they will still be able to access the information, right? But now you have actually taken and you actually received that mark, which makes you a. Let's just go and get that preset, or let's go and get the preset, right? For what receiving the mark ultimately makes you. So we'll start from. I believe that should be Revelation 14. So this is the book of Revelation 14, verse 9. And the third angel followed them, saying with a loud voice, if any man worship the beast and his image, and receive his mark in his right hand, so like in his forehead or in his hand, the same shall drink of the wine of the wrath of the Most High, Yahweh Basham Yahushai, which is poured out without mixture into the cup of his indignation. He shall be tormented with fire and brimstone in the presence of the angels and in the presence of the Lamb. Right. So I'm not out here saying that the digital ID, okay, is the MoTB and don't take it, right? But what we are saying is simply that the digital ID will eventually, gradually, okay, this is your gradually, this is where the gradualism comes into play, but it will eventually lead to the MoTB, because the digital ID is a key aspect of the MoTB, because that digital ID, that digital ID is going to have information that will eventually be stored in the MoTB, right? And you see right now how Esau is pushing, this digital ID, And you see how Esau normally pushes his agenda and makes it seem as though it's something that is for the progress of man, one small step for man, one giant step for mankind, right? But, how did Whitey on the moon, right? Even though these devils didn't actually go to the moon, but how did Whitey on the moon help improve your life? How does a digital ID improve your life? How does the MoTB improve? It doesn't, okay. But that ultimately won't matter because we already know these devils are the current rulers of this world, and what this shows you is that Esau Edom, right? The elite of Esau Edom are the true rulers of this kingdom, right? So, amen. Another day, another step closer to the MOTB, which is another step closer to the end of this thing. So, and with that, all praises, honor, and glory unto the Most High. Yahweh Ba'asham, Yahweh Shai Ba'asham Rakakwadash. Wa Abad Babala, and through the Spirit, I'll be Akyam, and you are quite edified. Shalom.